Hey, Mini-Me here, and I love GoldenEye, the game and the movie. I rented the movie a lot back in the day, and I'm pretty sure the game is the first game I ever played back when I was a mini-me. I figured it'd be interesting to go through the game's levels and compare them to the scenes in the movie, and that's what this video is. We're just going level by level and doing some comparing. And just a quick thing before we get started. I'm playing the game emulated and upscaled with a mouse and keyboard, which is why it looks how it does, which means there's like minor visual glitches and that, but otherwise, yeah, let's get to it. Starting from the top, the film and the game both open with a dam using a similar shot. The movie follows a plane over, and the game just has a static shot of the dam with a much more snowy backdrop, though the game does show other opening shots sometimes. These three watchtowers aren't in the movie, but so is a lot of this level, and honestly a lot of most levels really. The movie then cuts to Bond running onto the dam through a gate, which does happen in the game. There's a gate you shoot the padlock off to get to the dam, but there's so much more level before this. By this point in the game, you've spent some time following a truck and shooting dozens of baddies, and then after the gate you go into the watchtowers and down inside the dam, killing more dudes and completing more objectives before eventually bungee jumping off the dam. In the movie, Bond just runs over to the middle, ties himself up, and jumps. It's a really short scene, he doesn't even shoot anyone. The dam level ends with the bungee jump, but the movie goes on to show Bond doing some grapple hook and laser cutting super spy stuff to get in the facility. Here you can see it says Archangel on the screen, but earlier in the game it said Archangelsk, which is just the Russian name instead of the English name, which is very mildly interesting. Fun fact, the real life dam is actually in Switzerland, and the bungee jump in the film was a record-breaking jump, which has since become a popular location for bungee jumpers because of this movie. Neat. Bond enters the vents above a bathroom, and this is where the game's second level facility starts. They did a reasonably recognizable job of recreating the bathroom, at least in its layout. In both the game and the movie, you drop into a cubicle to surprise a guy, but in slightly different ways.
Beg your pardon? Forgot to knock.
As a general rule of thumb, in the game you're shooting down dozens of dudes. It doesn't matter if Bond is walking or talking in the movie scenes. In the games he's just shooting people because it's a video game. And Facility is no exception. The movie cuts to Bond exiting the bathroom and going down some stairs, the same stairs that are in the game, and are maybe a little iconic because of Facility's multiplayer map. Bond looks down the hallway and sees a guy packing meat. In the game, this hallway is pretty close by N64 standards in that the pillar and door are where they should be. Bond then goes straight into the door on his right, which enters a pantry with a cafeteria on the other side, and he runs into Sean Bean. This is where the game and the movie diverge pretty heavily. In the game, the door just enters a throwaway room with some lab stuff and boxes lying around, and you actually run down the hallway and find keycards and unlock remote doors and talk to a guy named Dr. Doak, while the movie is montaging Bond and Sean Bean's character Trevelyan doing some cool espionage stuff. In this, you can sort of see some visually recognizable stuff like the science lab with the large windows and the concrete hallways. Also, Trevelyan casually kills a scientist here, which is kind of funny because if you kill a scientist in the game, you fail the mission. A door decoder is used to get to the final room in the mission. In the movie, Trevelyan simply has it, but in the game you get it off old mate Dr. Doak, and then you meet Trevelyan for the first time in that final room. In the movie, they say the half of everything is luck line. In the game, they greet and exchange the For England and luck lines, and then they plant the charges. The charges are timed explosives which go off later in the movie, but in the game they're remote detonators that you set off before leaving. I love that in the movie these silos look like this, but in the game there's less of them and they're just giant blurry blobs of polygon. It was simpler times. Russian villain Oromov and his goons enter the room through the door in the game, or through the windows in the movie, and kill Trevelyan, in air quotes, and in the movie, Bond does this goofy hiding behind a trolley thing and rains down barrels on the bad guys before bailing through the conveyor belt. In the game, you set off the explosives and leave through the doors or the conveyor belt while being shot at. I like that they let you leave through the conveyor belt here. It always felt like a nice nod to people who knew the movie really well. The next level is called Runway, and they've got the location sort of right. It starts in a warehouse sort of building that does have the conveyor belt coming out to the runway, but the runway is enclosed by cliffs in the game, where it's really open in the movie. In the movie, Bond chases down the plane in this big exciting action scene where he chases the plane off a cliff in a motorcycle while being chased by Oromov and his men. The game has other objectives as usual, like blowing up turrets, and you just sort of find the plane sitting at the end of the runway, but like the movie, you are at least getting chased. The movie then goes into another iconic Bond opening credits thing, and this is where the game gets sort of weird. The next three missions simply don't happen. Surface and Bunker take place in Severnaya, which is a location in the film, but Bond never goes there, so those missions kind of just don't happen. And then there's Silo, which doesn't happen at all. It's a fun mission that has Bond photographing and destroying a satellite, which doesn't exist. 2 satellites are in the movie, and they're both in the sky, so I don't know where this third one came from. And after Bond goes for a pleasant drive and gambles a tad in the movie, we get to the next mission, which is Frigate. In the movie, this is another really short scene that has been extended out to a bigger thing in the game. Basically, all that happens here is a helicopter is being shown off on a boat, Oromov and our femme fatale Xenia kill the pilots, take their outfits, and fly the heli away, while Bond tries and fails to stop them. In the game, the ship is in the middle of the ocean instead of on the coast. You start in a small boat to get on it, and you run around killing dudes and saving hostages and defusing bombs and doing all sorts of stuff that isn't in the movie. The helicopter is in the level, and it's in a sort of similar spot to where it should be, but not really, and you gotta put a tracker on it, which doesn't happen at all in the movie. Also, the heli is called Pirate in the game and Tiger in the movie, and I have no idea why that is. The next 2 levels are Surface 2 and Bunker 2, which, like the originals, didn't happen. Bond was never in Severnaya, and you meet Natalia in Bunker 2, which doesn't happen until later on in the film, but this time at least in the film there are scenes in Severnaya, so we can do a bit of location comparing with the Severnaya levels. On the surface you can see a satellite dish building which resembles the one in the movie. It's quite well done, with the building even having handrails, and though the surrounding huts aren't there, the trees and atmosphere is pretty close. The main room inside the bunker is also cool to see, and though it's not as dense, it does have the TVs on the roof in the same configuration and the big screen showing similar looking stuff. Also, the handrails up to the side rooms are there too, which is cool. So the next mission that actually happened in the movie is Statue, and between this and the last mission, almost 40 minutes have passed in the movie. This is an important scene in the movie. Bond forces Xenia to take him to the mysterious villain known as Janice. Janice turns out to be Sean Bean, who we saw get shot in the head earlier in the film, and he comes out of some scaffolding in a big reveal with a dramatic supervillain speech which stuns James. At this point in the game, you've ran through and killed heaps of guys as usual and met up with Valentine in a shipping container, which didn't happen here in the movie. I think they did a really good job of capturing the visuals in this scene though, like the general look of all this is surprisingly on point. The colours and mix of statues and scaffolding translate surprisingly well here, and some of the statues are in the movie, like the one at the end of the level. You eventually run into Janice in a different spot. He corners you with 4 cronies and gives you his speech in a much more efficient way. It's kinda cute how they paraphrase emotional lines about how Sean Bean's parents were killed by a firing squad into stuff like, "Trust can be misplaced, James. My parents trusted the British government and they were betrayed." In the movie, Bond gets shot by a single crony with a dart, and he wakes up in the film's token helicopter with Natalia, which is actually where they first meet, and Bond has to use the ejector seat to avoid exploding. He says another one of his amazing one-liners before getting captured by a guy named Dmitry Mishkin, the Russian defense minister.
The things we do for frequent flyer mileage.
The game has you rush back to the start of the level to save Natalia while gunning down Sean Bean's cronies and more Russian baddies because you're told that Natalia is locked in the helicopter and that it's going to blow in 3 minutes. You save her, it blows up, you leave her to pick up something called a flight recorder that was never in the movie, and when you get back she's been taken by Dmitry Mishkin and you must go with him to finish the level. Aside from Hagrid in that shipping container, effectively the same result happens in both versions, just in different ways. The next level is Archives, which is also a big scene in the film that starts out with Bond and Natalia locked in an interrogation room where they chat about Severnaya and Boris before being interrogated by Mishkin, who is interrupted and killed by Oromov, which results in Bond and Natalia fighting their way out of the Archives. So in the game, this is one of the few missions which kind of makes a little more sense for Bond to be mowing down endless enemies, because the movie at least has heaps of enemies too, but as usual the actual mission is quite different. You do start in an interrogation room, but it doesn't resemble the one from the movie, and it doesn't have Mishkin, Oromov, or Natalia, and because you're up against the world's worst guards who simply leave your gun on the table in front of you, you start shooting your way around the level. Visually you can kind of see some similarities, like you can see these half-green walls in brief shots, though it's much more pronounced in the game. The stairwells in the game match the movie reasonably well. There's bookcases around like in the movie, though they're nowhere near as dense, and the game does the armoured doors really well. You can sort of see glimpses of the movie in the game, but generally it just looks way off. Eventually you find Mishkin and have a similar sort of conversation with him about Oromov, and he tells you to grab the helicopter's black box from a safe to prove that Sean Bean was involved in Severnaya, which again isn't a thing in the movie. You find Natalia in another room and she basically says to escape through a window, and it turns into an escort mission where you and her escape. Also, you never see Oromov. In the movie it's a little more complicated. Bond escapes in grand fashion, but he leaves Natalia behind with Oromov, who takes her as hostage. So the next mission, Streets, represents the most expensive looking set piece scene in the movie, where Bond smashes his tank around St. Petersburg, chasing down Oromov and Natalia while being chased by police and the military. It's a wonderful and ridiculous scene that just gets stupider and stupider. I love it. The game is very, very different. For one, it's at nighttime, there's no cars chasing you, and the obstacles are really just baddies who are on foot as well as landmines, neither of which are in the film. You can casually hop in and out of the tank, and you can even choose to shoot your own weapons from the tank's cockpit. At some point in the game, I guess Natalia got captured even though you just escaped from the archives with her, so the objective is still to chase down Oromov and Natalia, but instead of actually chasing anyone, you just need to get to the end of the level by a certain time. To extend the time, you can meet up and have a chat with Valentine again, which never happens in the film. Also, you're meant to minimize civilian casualties, but imagine how many civilians got taken out in the movie. He's just driving through buildings. The next level, Depot, is barely a scene in the film. Basically, Bond drives his tank past a train depot and sees Xenia, Natalia, and Oromov hop on the train. He just keeps driving, and that's it. Not sure how he managed to be stealthy with a tank, but it is what it is. In the game, there's an entire mission where you're running around destroying computer networks and arms caches and recovering blueprints before eventually finding the train. Talk about making something out of nothing. Train is a fun mission where you start somewhere near the back of the train and run between carriages, shooting dudes and destroying brake units to stop the train in order to eventually save Natalia. In the movie, however, Bond is somehow even less subtle about his tactics, where he simply uses his tank to shoot and stop the train. He hops on to greet Xenia and Sean Bean, and we get a nice close-up of one of the more common weapons in both the game and the movie, the KF-7 Soviet, or as I like to call it, the pencil gun. Just as a side note, I love how smug Sean Bean is in this scene. It's glorious. Oromov brings Natalia in with a gun to her head. Bond shoots Oromov. Trevelyan and Xenia escape through a door and get away on a helicopter. Natalia figures out Boris's password to find the Janus base. Bond lasers his way through the floor using his watch. They escape, kiss, and live happily ever after. Sort of. The game does do a respectable job with all this. After shooting your way through carriage after carriage, you do eventually make it to the pivotal scene where you're greeted by the gang. You can see how they visually captured this room with the green triangle padded looking walls, though everything seems to have swapped sides. Of course, everyone's standing in different positions in the film, but it's done okay. If you wait, Trevelyan will give you his speech in a condensed form, but either way you shoot Oromov, hopefully shoot Xenia too if you're on 00 agent. A roller door comes down in front of Trevelyan and Xenia, which is different to them just running out a simple door, and the game even locks up the windows like the film, just in a slightly different way. Natalia then uses the computer to find the Janus base and then crack Boris's password, which makes no sense at all, but we'll just ignore that. Bond uses his laser watch to escape through the floor just like in the film, and you get away, though unlike in the movie, you're greeted with more enemies outside. And it's still nighttime. We do get a nice look at the train though, which they've modelled reasonably well looking at this side by side. So in the movie, Bond takes a bit of time off from saving the world from imminent doom to meet with an American and have sex with Natalia before they both get shot out of the sky and land in the jungle, which is the name of our next level. You and Natalia start in front of a plane crash wearing basically the right outfits, though Natalia's shirt is green in the movie, and you get on your way killing baddies and taking out mounted turrets. The movie happens a little differently. Bond and Natalia fall unconscious outside the plane before being ambushed from a helicopter by none other than Xenia on a top. I guess you could say she came down on a top of them. I'm hilarious. Bond takes her out in true Bond fashion, and he says one of the best lines in the movie.
She always did enjoy a good squeeze.
The game translates this into a boss battle where you just sort of shoot her until she dies, and she has a grenade launcher and a P90 instead of a pencil gun. The level continues as usual until you eventually find a cave and enter an elevator to get into the Janus base, but this isn't how it happened in the film. Instead, our heroes come across the base rising out of the lake. They run around the outside of it and get shot at by some baddies, which is nice because it at least proves that there were some bad guys in the jungle, and these guys are what the models in the game were based on. Natalia and Bond slide their way into the base to avoid getting shot, and that's where the next level begins. After getting Natalia to hide and after some shootouts, Bond gives himself up, but not before he plants some remote mines, which are notable because they look just like the remote mines in the game, so it's cool to see them in the movie. Bond and Natalia get captured. We have that big scene where Natalia slaps Boris and Boris clicks an explosive pen one too many times, and Bond and Natalia escape through an elevator. The game level, as usual I guess, is very different, though perhaps more different than usual this time. It has you going throughout the base destroying mainframes and protecting Natalia while she works on a downstairs computer to disable the GoldenEye satellite, which isn't where they go in the movie and isn't something she does in the movie. You also run into Boris for some cute N64 style comedy before eventually chasing Trevelyan into an elevator to end the level. Before we move on, let's just do a quick side by side because you can see what they were trying to do here. They got the basic structure of the place down reasonably well, albeit with way more glass in the game, and you can even see the big green map on the screen in the game. It's neat. Caverns is the next level, which is a decent level that has you running through some underground water caverns killing dudes as usual, but this level doesn't appear in the movie at all, and it doesn't really make any sense in context, so there's not a lot to say about it. It's just sort of weird. It's like Silo. It shouldn't be here. I don't know what it's doing here. Get it out of here. Let's move on. Finally, we have Cradle, which isn't the last level in the game, but it is the last level that's based on the movie. In the film, Natalia and Bond take out a guard. Bond gives Natalia a pistol and she goes off to get a helicopter while Bond runs to the middle while getting shot at by Sean Bean from below. The game starts you out in front of a tower, which I guess has the elevator door on the side of it, and just like the movie, you run along a catwalk, though this time you don't get shot at by Boromir from below. Instead, you get shot at by bad guy after bad guy, which simply doesn't happen in the movie, where it's just the two of them. Trevelyan activates a console that you must disable in 3 minutes by shooting it. In the movie, Trevelyan is only concerning himself with killing Bond, but Bond does put a pipe in a conveyor belt to mess up the GoldenEye alignment, so this bit of gameplay kind of represents that. You then go through the level swapping between shooting and chasing Trevelyan while taking out other guards, until eventually you follow him down to that small platform and kill him. In the film, after a lengthy indoor fight, Bond falls down to this platform and Trevelyan follows Bond to try and finish him off, so they go down in the opposite order to the game. This part of the film is quite famous, where Bond drops Sean Bean to one of his many cinematic demises before Bond gets saved by Natalia, who's taken over the helicopter with a gun to the pilot's head. In the game, a little cutscene shows Bond jumping on the heli in the same way, though Natalia is simply piloting the heli this time. And that's GoldenEye. Now you might remember that there was another couple of levels. There were secret levels, Aztec and Egyptian, and they were sort of throwback levels. Like I did some research. I'm not the biggest Bond fan, but I did some research, and they are throwback levels to some of the old movies. So like Moonraker and Live and Let Die and The Golden Gun, The Man with the Golden Gun. They don't represent scenes from those movies, but they sort of carry on, like the Baron Samedi or whatever his name is, and The Golden Gun, of course. All sort of carry on and have little like references, and it's sort of like a cutesy fan service thing for Bond's fans, which I think is pretty interesting, but yeah, nothing to do with GoldenEye the film. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. I didn't touch the Wii version or reloaded the HD version of the Wii version, simply because I haven't played it that much. I don't like it that much, and not a lot of people do, and I didn't want to like weigh this video down with it because, well, yeah. I mean, partly because I'm lazy and don't want to play it, but also I didn't want to weigh the video down with a game that no one cares that much about. So yeah, I just simply didn't include it, but if there's enough demand for it, then I'm happy to maybe do another video and follow up this video with a video about GoldenEye Wii and comparing it to both the 64 game, since it's a remake, as well as the film, because it does some interesting things, like, you remember that scene in the film where Valentine and Bond meet in a club, like Hagrid and Bond meet in a club. That's in like a shipping container or something in the N64 game. But in the Wii game, they actually go to, well, Craig goes to a nightclub and meets Valentine in a nightclub, which is a nice little twist and isn't a direct remake of the game. It's actually more of a retelling of the movie, which I think is pretty interesting. But yeah, otherwise, let me know if you want to see more videos like this. I wouldn't mind covering some more movies, like Peter Jackson's King Kong's a good one, and Wolverine, X-Men Origins Wolverine had a really good video game. Yeah, links to my second channel and Twitter and all that are in the description. I'm doing all the generic YouTuber plugin stuff, but yeah, go down, check it out. Hope you enjoyed the video, and yeah, have a good one. Bye.